The jail's Law Enforcement Courts Committee meeting is called to order. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Move adoption of the agenda.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to adopt the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Agenda's approved. Item number 3 on the agenda is the juvenile detention report. Director Denise Collins. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you all? Denise Collins with the Director of Washington County Juvenile Detention Center. The one thing that I would like to note on my report this evening is the statistical information, which is on page 3, I believe. The number of days of detention for the total period increased between 2019 and this year was a full month, basically 31 days. It increased in 2019, the number of days of detention was 230. This year, it was 261 days. So I'm here to answer any of your questions if you have any.
Justice Yanez.
Can you shed some light on that increase?
Actually, I cannot. The only thing I can tell you is that it's based on between the day that the residents, that the juvenile is taken into the facility and they all have to be, when they come inside the facility, if it's on a criminal offense, they have to be seen within the first 72 hours of holding, and then from there, the judge can set them off 14 days for adjudication or trial, and then from there, she can hold them, sentence them up to 90 days per charge. And it just depends on, say for instance, how many juveniles are held for 14 days, or if they need, if their attorneys or prosecuting attorneys need more time to gather evidence before a trial or anything like that, and based on the sentence. So a kid can be sentenced anywhere from 1 day thereafter up to 90 days.
Gotcha. And how are you doing in your position?
I'm doing well,
Good.
like I never left in 2010.
Good to hear. Thank you.
Other questions, Justice Harbison?
We've had an increase because the daily, the number of people in JDC, like maybe 6 months ago, for several years, they were 14, 15, 16, 17. We're almost at capacity. Your capacity is what, 32?
Today,
No, what is your capacity, the total number of juveniles that you can hold in the detention center?
36. Our capacity is
36?
yes, ma'am. Our bed capacity has always been 36.
Yes, okay, well, I thought it was 32, but it's 36. But, you know, we're just creeping up. We're up in the middle 20s now. And I don't know if this is because the number of increases in juvenile cases or, but if you could maybe get us some information, show us a chart of when this actually started. I think it started about 6 months ago. So, you know, what's changed is, I guess, is what I really want to know, because, you know, we've had this population increase for, you know, the last 3 or 4 years, but it doesn't seem to have gotten caught up in the juvenile system until just recently. Anyway, I'd appreciate that information if you could, and I'll get with you and maybe explain more clearly what I'd like to see, where this started, and try to identify the reason for it. Thank you.
You will.
Other questions?
Just looking at the report, I noticed that the average stay days for Madison County is 15.67, whereas Washington County is 6.09. Any insight as to why the average length of stay for Madison County juvenile is longer than a Washington County juvenile?
Well, Judge Zimmerman does both Washington County and Madison County. So I guess in my mind, there's no difference between Washington and Madison County kids because Judge Zimmerman does both counties. So even though it says Madison County and Washington County, we still hold both. And it's only signified based on where they live, but Judge Zimmerman does both courts. So I know that doesn't make sense to you because they are differentiated, but they're held based on because it's her courts.
Fair enough. Thanks.
So, but basically it's because she only goes to Madison County once a month. So I don't know if that answered your question, really.
So if she increased the frequency of going to Madison County, would the bed days decline?
Possibly. Every now and then, if she knows she has more cases to be heard in Washington County, she'll sometimes hear cases for Madison County in Washington County, but that's very seldom.
Okay.
Far and few in between.
I mean, Washington County is 81% of it, so it's the bulk anyways, but
Yeah.
sorry, I didn't mean to camp out on that, just curious.
Other questions? Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
The enforcement activity report is item number 4. Chief Deputy J. Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Jay Cantrell with the Washington County Sheriff's Office. Tonight I bring the enforcement report. Our enforcement activity is fairly steady. Nothing out of the ordinary to report on the enforcement side. So I'll be happy to answer any questions that the committee might have about the enforcement side of the building.
Justice
I just want to
Harbison?
make one comment because this used to be a big issue, and that was the number of animal calls. And it looks like, we've increased it, about 10, but that's something that's not really leaping off the page.
Well, those have been holding pretty steady
Yeah.
about, in the teens to 20s.
Right.
We added an animal control officer a couple years ago, an extra one, so we've got 3 now that go out and deal with those calls. But still the highest percentage call that we have is animal calls.
Uh-huh. Or dogs.
Yeah, well,
basically.
dogs, cats, cows out,
Yeah. So, I've even gotten that call.
so have I.
I haven't. No. Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Major Densler, you're next.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. We have the detention center report that the numbers are up, as you can see, on intakes. And everything is very busy. The numbers aren't going down at all. Everybody's tried. I think the population increase is catching up with us. On the detention board days, we put a dollar figure out there on what the amount they bring in every month for us. The only thing that may have went down just a little bit is the transport miles.
Questions? Justice Harbison.
How much of this intake is due to Springdale? How much of this increase is due to Springdale?
We're not sure just yet. I mean, it's a little bit, but I think it's more just overall everybody. Springdale has brought in a few more. We don't have that number. And you're trying to figure out how to track that. But it's not just overwhelming us from Springdale. It's everybody.
Well, since they've closed down their jail, I think that would be an interesting number. So, thank you.
Justice Deakins.
I have a question for you. It says in January we transferred 95 inmates to the state prison, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
That seems like a really high number. I think that might be the highest number I've ever seen since I've sat on this court and looked at these numbers, correct?
Yes, they have a rotation, and they've called us, and that's probably one of our lower numbers, yes.
Good.
They are starting to take them.
The overall population doesn't move very much, though.
No, it doesn't. That's what I was gonna talk about. At 4 o'clock, we was at 799 people that we touched. Last week, we was right at 800 or over. But it's the pretrial people coming in is what seems like growing the most.
I think that's what confuses me so much about this when I try to keep wrapping my head around this number, is that we can transfer almost 100 state commits and nothing seems to make any progress on that overall number. It's very confusing to me. Do you have
Well,
any?
the pretrial's growing. Everything you see about the pretrial, like Ann hadn't got to ask it yet, but 427 today. And it was higher than that this morning. But the pretrial's there's more people coming to jail.
So for
yeah.
the month of January, nothing has changed within regard to the policies of what you guys are holding or anything in terms of detainees? It's
No,
just
we
the-
might have been a little more fortunate. The new report, about 3 pages back, I think we're kind of getting out of line here on our detention pretrial, our bed count, and the pretrial. The next thing is it's going up a little bit. This last news sheet where it shows that we had 1,132 bookings. This is supposed to be our slow time of the year where we do 700 or 800. Used to we wouldn't even hardly break 1,000. And you see that we got to turn loose 257. Well, that number was right around 100, 150, and then like we've been telling you, it's been 200, kind of holding at 200. And now it's 257. So that many more people's coming in. That growth part is what's causing our problems that you're looking at.
Gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Justice Harbison.
The growth part, and most of these are drugs and drug paraphernalia. And so it appears to me that in the community that we need to be addressing a drug problem. And, I think that's key to the number of people we have in jail. I think we have a lot of people out there that want to address this and volunteer and get involved, and I hope this happens. Thank you.
Justice Deakins.
I'm sorry to tag team. Are there any programs being offered to our inmates right now at the Washington County Jail?
Such as anything at all?
Alcohol
Willie?
Anonymous,
Yeah, we do Alcohol Anonymous.
anger management.
And they come in, all the churches offer different kinds of programs. They come in of evening. And our biggest problem right now is we have no space to put anybody anywhere. Everybody's full sleeping on the floor, or 100 on the floor. Some days it's 90, some days it's 110. But, when we talked about the expansion, that was gonna be a big part of having programs. But the hardest part about the jail and having programs is keeping the people there. They can bond out, they go to prison. I mean, somebody may not ever stay long enough to get through them, but we do try to offer stuff. GED, I have a hard time because, the time limit on it, but we do get a few graduated from it, men and women.
Who coordinates those programs at the detention center?
Our Chaplain Adams does most of that. Our 4 chaplains, he's the main one.
Gotcha. I'm going to reach out to him because I get a lot of feedback from citizens that don't really feel like they have access, volunteers that want to come do those programs, and they feel like they have hurdles in getting access.
Well, there is a little bit of hurdles. I mean, they gotta pass a background, and not that they wouldn't, but be able to go through, jump through all the hoops, but to have time to actually do it and to have a place to do it. I think you was down and took her tour of that one multi-purpose room is all we have.
Gotcha.
One on each side, and, having space and time to actually put these on. But that is something we looked at on our expansion.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Other questions? Thank you, sir.
Hey,
Whoops.
how many state prisoners we have today?
Let's see, today we had, my glasses focused here. Let's see. 102, all right, some reason I can't find that. 102.
How about federal?
Federal today, we had, 92.
92. Madison County?
Well, they're mixed both ways as far as their pretrial or their, let's see. I need 38. I
Okay.
ain't got my right paperwork.
And the rest of them be Washington County and City of Fayetteville and Spring Hills,
Right.
correct?
Right.
Okay, and you said there's how many total today?
Today, the high count was 799 so far. That was at 4 o'clock.
799.
It'll probably be 815, 8 1/4.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Other questions? If not, thank you, sir.
Yes.
Item number 5 is the Ombudsman Report. Dr. Edelman.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Stan Edelman, Washington County Jail Ombudsman. We began operations, as you know, in September. We've got about 5 or so months of experience under our belt now. With me today is Deputy Ombudsperson Alexis Acello, who's a student at the law school here in Fayetteville. And she has assisted me since we began, and especially the spreadsheet that I attached to my report was certainly an eye-opener for us, and I think maybe an eye-opener for everybody. But I said back when Sheriff Helder recruited me, when the full quorum court in this committee asked me to take this project on, that just kind of intuitively, without statistical basis for it, we knew that FTAs were a major problem, exacerbating jail overcrowding. we didn't quite know until just last week, kind of statistically, how that played out. And I recall saying at the time, if we're not willing to take another look and look at some alternatives to maybe what we've been doing now, we may as well not engage an ombudsman project, because we've been able to, and I'm pleased and proud to say it, we've been able to month by month save the county bed days. We've been able to help people obtain release directly through the prosecutor, through the courts. Working with the bail project, we've been able to make some progress, but it really is, I have to say, just scratching the surface. If we don't really confront more in a more frontal way the issue of failures to appear, and I know there's controversy surrounding that, and like I said, it was a major surprise to us when I just asked Lexi to see if we can quantify the scope of the problem, and there it was, 130 some odd. Not to say that all those people can be out safely tomorrow. They've got backstories, and there are reasons why bonds get set in the amount that they do sometimes. But what I've been saying pretty much all along from the outset is we need to be willing to kind of rethink the paradigm of how we can deal with FTAs in a way that does not exacerbate the jail overcrowding problem. I'm going to oversimplify things slightly and say that if on the spreadsheet there are 130 some odd names, and if Major Denzer says that right now about 100 on the floor, and in past months maybe about 50 on the floor, 60 on the floor. I'm not saying we could get everybody off the floor and into a bed, but by dealing, again, taking a different view at how we treat FTAs, but we could make a major dent in that problem. And that's kind of the gist of my report. Month by month, again, we've been kind of chipping away as best we can, saving the county bed days, and again, working with and through the prosecutor, the public defender, the sheriff's staff have been just phenomenal to us. And again, to really start to make a dent is something that I felt obliged at this point to highlight for the Quorum Court, for this committee. Thank you.
Justice Deakins.
I want to thank you guys for your work and your dedication. I've really appreciated all that you've brought to me. I want you to know that I read these reports thoroughly. It's a lot to digest. Unfortunately, this criminal justice issue and this criminal justice reform thing it's very convoluted, and it's at all levels. And so I do appreciate you giving us these statistics. County Prosecutor Durrett said he was going to reach out to you and talk, and I'm going to state that publicly to hold you to that. So, okay, good.
He stated it privately as well.
Okay,
and as I say, I've had no bigger and better friend in this whole project than the county prosecutor and his staff.
I want to talk to you a little bit maybe more about your background as a professor.
Okay. I've taught...
No. I got your background. I'm saying...
Okay, not my resume. Okay.
Not necessarily specific to this report, but
Okay, sorry.
For somebody like me, the cash bail reform is a big issue in terms of for me to understand and digest and understand the alternatives.
Mm-hmm.
I was told by somebody that bail reform, it's not if, it's when, correct?
That's my view, just looking around the country, because it's on the agenda of states, of counties, all around the country, and there are prosecutors, in fact, around the country who are taking the lead in addressing this issue. So it's not liberal, conservative, Democrat, Republican. It's not. It's a justice issue that I think everybody is bought into. And I think what's coming under question, to try and boil things down for you, sir, a little bit, is the fact that whether one gets released or not pre-trial comes down to money, comes down to wealth, or it comes down to poverty. And I attached a little quote, a little excerpt from a colleague of mine at Ohio State, saying release shouldn't be a matter of the size of your bank account. We should be looking at predictive instruments. We should be looking at metrics, ways to gauge dangerousness or safety in someone's release, as opposed to looking how much money you got.
Will you do me a favor?
Sure.
Will you assume I know nothing on the subject? And I would be so brave as to speak for my colleagues too. If you come across a resource that you think would be beneficial, would you share that with us via email or whatever, please?
I absolutely would, and there's no secret here about how much the Bail Project here and replicating their experience around the country has contributed. Just imagine how much worse off we would be if they were not here. But again, you're absolutely right to point to discussion, ferment, if you will, desire across the political spectrum, really, to address this question of wealth or poverty as the determinant as to whether somebody is sitting in jail or not.
Have you been approached by the group that's doing our judicial study?
I've sat down with the group that's meeting once a month, and also, the National Center for State Courts. I've made it known I'm available to speak to them, give my perspective on the issue, however much help that can be. Happy to talk certainly to my friend Matt Durrett, but happy to talk to anybody.
Thank you. I appreciate making yourself available. Thank you, sir.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Other questions or comments? Justice Harbison.
When I read this report, which was Friday, I think, when it was put on out on the internet or out in our packet, I went through this and I was astonished. I was just absolutely, because I've been trying to address this pretrial situation for about 3 years and trying to figure out why we have so many pretrial people that should be out on bail. You know, I just don't think we have that many violent people in Washington County. Yes, there are violent people, and there are people that should not be out there. But when you look at, you know, I sat in on an 801 hearing, and there was a young man, he probably was somewhere between 25 and 30, came in for an FTA. Now, apparently he had been out on bail because he did not come in on the jail side. And the judge asked him, why did you not show up for court? And he said, I just got a new job, and that was my first day to be on the job. And I just felt I needed to be at work on my new job. And the judge looked at him and said, well, I don't remember exactly what the bail was, but it was something like $50,000. How is a young man starting out working $50,000, what's that, $5,000? How's he gonna write a check so he can get out of jail and go back to work? I mean, I just thought that particular case it just overwhelmed me. And it's and I know, and I have a lot of respect for all of our judges, but I'm gonna say to all of our judges, we need to address this. You all need to get together and come up with some kind of metrics to help release these people, or there's going to be a lawsuit. I see it coming down the road. And I would rather for us to work together, let them work together to work out a solution. Because bail reform and criminal justice reform is here. It's not just in Washington County, it is all over the nation. Thank you.
Justice Duncan.
Mr. Edelman, just wanted to make sure I read your report correctly, that there were 673 bed days saved over your time so far?
That's our best estimate, as precise mathematical as we can be.
And your cost so far has been $6,240 through the end of
That's out of
January.
the $15,000 appropriation, yeah.
You paid for yourself.
Well, thank you. I mean, at the very outset of things, I appreciate that. At the outset, I think I put a note of caution out there. Don't expect us to be kind of the magic bullet that's gonna change things in and of ourselves. Again, we're incrementally chipping away as best we can, and then trying to look kind of longer range. If I can just briefly address Justice Harbison, what you were saying about the people you saw at those 8.1 hearings really mirrors what we see week in, week out in the jail, and I think I did quantify it in the statistics, saying out of the 80-some odd people we've seen, we've only identified a small handful, you can count them on two hands, certainly, that we really think are dangerous in the sense that I don't want them living next to me, I don't think you want them living next to you, but we interviewed 5 people over the weekend, all involved with meth, all possession of either meth or paraphernalia, all dangers to themselves, way more than they are dangerous to anybody else. There are people in far from our perspective, overwhelming numbers that are not dangerous. They're in on large bonds on FTAs, and again, we're just beating the drum, trying to see if we can all put our heads together and come to maybe a better way, a better mousetrap. Lexi?
Yeah. If I may also, Justice Harbison, what you share is anecdotal about the man who needed to make it to work, but to give more life to the spreadsheet, that is very representative of the stories that we hear. It is regularly people who can't lose work, or they'll lose their job and lose the ability to feed their family, or people who have set up rides, sometimes even 3 rides, and they've all fallen through and they can't make it to court. Often these people have called the court and said, I can't make it today, and they have been told they cannot reschedule. They make it or they get the warrant. So the story that you share, it speaks to more than just the cases that you heard that day. Many of the people in the spreadsheet are in very similar situations. So thank you for sharing the story.
Thank you, Lexi. And I would add one other thing from experience in Oklahoma City. And FTAs are an issue everywhere. Bail and bond are an issue everywhere. What I learned from judges and public defenders in Oklahoma City is that somebody fails to appear, the judge stays the warrant. The judge doesn't make a finding of FTA of default right away. They give the public defender and their investigators 48 hours, round this person up, get him to court. It's true, it's their responsibility to show, but there's a range of things we can do that maybe down the road a little bit we can talk about alternative ways to look at and to treat the problem.
Justice Madison.
Do you have any results of what that happened, what that did in Oklahoma City?
I don't have any
Okay.
statistical basis, just anecdotal.
Okay.
Other questions? Thank you, Dr. Alderman.
Thank you.
I don't have any questions for Professor Edelman, but I do have a comment that the bail bondsman, Professional Bail Bondsman of Arkansas Association released, and they gave me. Their FTA is only down at 2%, but what they're saying in jail overcrowding, you have 3 choices. Build more jails at taxpayer expense, catch and release as per the Arnold Foundation, a reckless and dangerous system with a failure to appear rate, FTA, as high as 50%, resulting in millions of dollars of wasted taxpayers' expense going to meaningless manpower hours. Commercial bails with no taxpayer cost, and which has worked for 300 plus years. The failure to appear rate in the state of Arkansas for arrestees released on commercial bail was 2.6, the lowest in the United States. And in those instances where the defendants failed to appear, which resulted in a bond forfeiture, the Arkansas bail bond companies paid in excess of $1 million to the Arkansas court system in 2018. An ancillary benefit of the Arkansas bail bonds profession, aside from the FTA issue, is that for the years ending in 2018, the sum of $3,476,160,000 was paid from the bail bonds fees to various state agencies for their operational support, including $210,706 for battered women's shelters around the state. The alternative bail system with FTA rates approaching 50% pay nothing. And they also say that the money distributed as follows to the Public Defender's Commission, the Arkansas Sheriff's Association, Bail Bonds Recovery Fund, Domestic Peace Fund, and State General Fund. Agencies maintained for operations forfeiture presented to the board was only 148. 148 out of 57,936. That's a 2.6 failure to appear rate. So I think before we do anything in considering the recommendation that was set on reorganizing or restructuring our bail bonds system, I think we need to have both sides give their view on their recommendation to the criminal justice system. Because what this recommendation was doing is saying that Washington County Jail Ombudsman Project respectfully, but with the utmost urgency, requests that the courts of Washington County, effective immediately, discontinue the practice of setting bonds in the amount of $50,000 or $70,000 or greater, except in cases where changes themselves, underlying facts in the defendant's personal history, so on and so forth. You're changing somebody's industry. I mean, the bail bondsman's industry is going to be impacted by this if we act urgently and immediately. And I think we need to look at both sides of the issue and recognize who has a greater or less failure to appear rate and why. And what are those practices that are in place and what are other people doing? I respect what Professor Edelman is doing and the Ombudsman Project, but I feel that we as a court, if we have gone in this far, it's only right to look at it from all sides. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Couple of real quick thoughts, if I may. First of all, I would more than welcome, and I've already spoken to a couple of persons in the bail bonding industry in Washington County and around Arkansas. I would more than welcome the bail bondsmen as an association into the discussion, into the conversation. I don't see this in an adversary way as Ombudsman Project versus bail bondsmen. We need to be looking at the system.
Absolutely.
And then the one thing I would add that might be a little bit at odds with respectfully with your comments, I think we need to not look at the bail bond system as a cash cow. There are monies that go to very good purposes, but then to say that that they are going toward battered women's shelters, which is a wonderful thing. Just we need to be looking at that kind of not in we can't look away from the income that generates.
I agree, and if we can do anything is we're all on the same team, and that's Team Washington County. And if we can glean from both sides and come up with something that is a template for the rest of the country, I would be thrilled. I don't like the templates that are coming out of New York. I don't like the templates that are coming out of New Mexico or Seattle. They're failing. So if we can have this open discussion, and I'm so glad that you are, open for discussion and always looking for good and better ideas will make this county great. Thank you. Glad to know we're on the same team.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 6 is the Washington County Criminal Justice Work Group report. Deputy Cantrell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The sheriff's work group met on January 17th at the sheriff's office in the annex. Discussed with Mike Reynolds some of the Fayetteville PD parameters for their arrest. Discussed with Matt Durrett, the prosecutor, and the public defender about their new positions they got approved through the Quorum Court and how their process was coming along on hiring and filling those positions. We talked about the committees and encouraged, we have 3 committees, subcommittees on this work group: the facilities subcommittee, the pretrial subcommittee, and the case processing subcommittee. Ms. Moore was the moderator for the meeting since Ms. Jones was out that day, and encouraged the committee, the subcommittees to meet and try to formulate some ideas and bring it back to the group. But just a brief overview of what we've done, and we'll have another meeting this Friday down at the sheriff's office on the 14th, so at noon.
Any questions?
I probably should have asked this earlier at the corner. Does all corner calls go through the sheriff's office?
No.
No, it goes through the coroner's office? Who just keeps up with his run reports? That's mainly what I was.
Yes, yeah, typically he gets called out through EMS. The sheriff's office calls him, or the PD can call him, but he gets most of his calls, I think, through EMS.
So Central EMS would have
Yeah.
all of his run reports for the year?
Well, I don't know if they'll have all of them, because he could get a call from us if we respond to a deceased person that EMS may not have responded to. Then it could be us that calls him out, or if he responds to the city, Fayetteville, for somebody that EMS may not have responded to, then it could be the city police department that calls him out.
So how could I get a number? How is the best way to approach a number?
I guess from him,
Okay.
you can get, probably could get something from EMS on how many times they've called him out. Then I think they're gonna be the primary source of his call-outs.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? All right,
Thank you,
sir.
Mr. Chairman.
Item number 7, discussion on the lease agreement on the county buildings at 114 North College Avenue in Fayetteville. Justice Deakins, do we have an update?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I was late getting this to Ms. Burnett, so there was a fixed asset listing in your folders tonight when you sat down. This is what I could get from the state after several iterations and requests. I'm a little bit disappointed. If you'll see down about 2/3 of the way down the page, they are claiming improvements for energy efficiency of $875,000, and that is the extent of the breakdown we can get out of that. So, to sum it up so far where we're at, if you add these additions up, it's a little over 1.2 million. If I were to be so brave as an accountant, I would say this detailed listing back here. If you remember, the lease calls for a reimbursement based on the depreciated value of the property. Well, this list back here totaling up to $303,000, I would assume is the full cost of the property, and so that number would need to be adjusted down for any depreciation. So anyways, I think where it's coming into focus here, we know what it would take to go reclaim that building. I've had, like many of you have, I've had a lot of discussions with the public and the volunteers that work at that facility. We know it's a great resource for the state. We know it's a great resource for our county. So I think, it's time for us to investigate all of our options with that building and work with the judge on that and see if we can't come to some sort of agreement with the state. So, thank you, sir.
Other questions or comments? Thank you, Justice Deakins. Item 8, a resolution to address the issue of housing federal inmates in the Washington County Detention Center. Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to read this resolution in full. So, this is item 20-R-002. A resolution to address the issue of housing federal inmates in the Washington County Detention Center. whereas the government of Washington County, Arkansas is and for all the people of Washington County and is committed to the safety and well-being of the people of Washington County, and whereas the Washington County Jail with 710 beds is above capacity and has been for some time, and whereas we acknowledge the diligent efforts and commitment to easing and finding solutions to this jail capacity and crowding by our county sheriff, his staff, and other elected officials, including this court, and we commend them for their hard work and dedication. And whereas, despite these intense efforts and policy changes that have been implemented, the Washington County Jail remains over capacity. And whereas, we feel our first and foremost responsibility is to the people of Washington County, Arkansas, by whom we were elected and for whom we take an oath of office to serve. We are aware of our obligations to properly fund the jail as required by Arkansas law and as fiduciaries for the people of Washington County. As Arkansas Code annotated 14-14-802 subsection A2 requires that the county government, acting through the county quorum court, provide necessary services for its citizens, including law enforcement protection services in the custody of persons accused or convicted of crimes. And whereas the Washington County Sheriff and the then county judge entered into an intergovernmental agreement, detention services, the agreement referred to as the agreement from here forth, effective date December 1st, 2015. The agreement provided for housing, safekeeping, and subsistence of federal detainees in accordance with terms and conditions set forth therein. The agreement can be terminated in writing by either party for any reason, giving at least 30 calendar days notice in advance of such termination, whereas the housing of these federal detainees under the agreement has increased substantially over the last 3 years, increasing from a total bed days of 9,809 for the period of January 1st through September of 2017 to 20,187 bed days for the 9-month period January to September 2019. And whereas solving the jail overcrowding and the causes of overcrowding is a journey that will require long-term and ongoing commitment from this and future quorum courts, and there are steps that can be taken immediately to ease the overcrowding in Washington County Detention Center. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, the County Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas respectfully resolves hereby to request and support the Washington County Sheriff to take all necessary steps to exercise immediately the powers of termination under the intergovernmental agreement detention services described above. Let it be further resolved that this resolution is made for the purpose of ensuring a safe and healthy environment at the Washington County Detention Center for law enforcement protection services and the custody of persons accused or convicted of crimes, and to comply with Arkansas Code. So, let me comment on this briefly, Mr. Chairman, if you would. So, we know that this is a big, big problem. And I bring this resolution tonight in continued effort to address the overcrowding issue at our jail. This resolution was an effort led by citizens, and I very much thank them for their time and participation in the jail overcrowding tonight and in the previous time since I've been on this court. I think it's safe to say that consensus on this matter is coming into focus. Great solutions are being brought to the table by dedicated people. I want to especially thank Ms. Beth Koger for drafting this resolution and also securing my co-sponsors, J.P. Yanez and J.P. Duncan. And I speak for all of us when I say we would invite other co-sponsors if other justices feel so compelled. My goal is to publicly state as a quorum court that our sheriff and his department have our full support in all their efforts to reduce our inmate population in the detention center by any appropriate methods. While we wait on our judicial study, the results of that study, see the impact of funding our additional prosecutors and public defenders, and assess our options with the old jail facility, there are immediate steps that should be taken to reduce our jail population, and in doing so, improve the safety and conditions for our inmates and our detention officers. With this resolution, I want to highlight the necessary step that our county can relieve itself of the self-imposed burden of housing federal inmates. I know the main argument against this action is that it will inevitably focus on the fiscal ramifications. And yes, that should be considered with due weight. However, if we were being warned that the overpopulation of our detention center is a threat to the health and safety of our officers as well as our inmates, What is the cost of that risk? Overcrowding puts unnecessary burdens on our physical facilities, and I don't think anyone has quantified that cost. Overcrowding is preventing staff and volunteers from providing critical programs and assistance to our inmates at a high cost to the future. That turns our back on benefits seen by both the community and individual inmates. I want to reference our yearly jail inspection that we were supplied with last September from the Department of Finance and Administration. On page 3, I want to highlight a couple things that came to my attention. Due to the inmate population count, the site has and is aging more rapidly. With high numbers of inmates, staff are not able to address needed maintenance goals and physical plant objectives. It appears that the climate control equipment system struggles to maintain temperature goals. It appears that the employees struggle as they attempt to provide programming, support services, and activities and like aspects. The high numbers of inmates within the site prompts a number of concerns as to public safety, employee safety, inmate safety, visitor safety, and general safety goals such as hourly checks, emergency response readiness, risk mitigation, and like features. The federal contract also puts additional burdens and stipulations on our county with regard to housing and transport at a higher cost. When all this is added up, I have serious doubts that the county even comes out ahead on the $62 a day per diem fee. I want to remind the court that we have a funding mechanism passed last year by this court that has welcomed the municipalities to come in and work with us and share in this burden. And for the sake of argument, I want to highlight the hypocrisy and irony in the fact that when we discuss doubling the size of our jail at $40 million, we're expected to disregard the fiscal impact in the light of safety and humanitarian concerns. But when we are talking about $62 a day of per diem, with big questions about that sufficiency, we are expected to be fiscal hawks, blind to safety and health concerns. So to sum this up, change is the only constant in time and in this jail issue. We're only going to grapple with bigger challenges with this problem. This contract may have made sense a few years ago when we implemented it, but I think the county's changing needs have determined its obsolescence. It's a luxury that cannot be prioritized ahead of our needs or the needs of our citizens. Maybe it can be reconsidered one day, but I personally do not want Washington County to be in the jail business. I think to pursue housing inmates for other jurisdictions on a voluntary basis complicates the commitment to our citizens and our county and stunts the possibility of offering expanded services to our inmates. Those are not the circumstances I want our county to bind itself to. So I would like for this quorum court, this committee tonight, and in the quorum court as a whole, to support this resolution and prioritize the citizens of Washington County. So I make a motion that we approve this and send it to the full quorum court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second? Second. Okay. Sheriff Helder, you want to talk to us?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Patrick, for giving me a heads up Friday that this was coming. And I appreciate the work that you've done. I appreciate the interaction with Beth. I'm glad you're getting some of that now. I've been dealing with it for a while. It's kind of an interesting alliance, isn't it, as we come to kind of a taxation issue and a humanitarian issue and all the things that are implied throughout this complicated process. So I guess to address, if I may, Mr. Chairman,
Sure.
just some thoughts before you move forward with your resolution. You've already stated the fiscal ramifications and implications. I think that the citizens you're talking to might also want to see where that money tree is, that we're going to be able to overcome a budget that's already been set with a projected income coming in of a $2.5 million or more based on the two resolutions. I don't know. I mean, that's kind of your job. The budget is the quorum court's job. But I just know that it's been voted on, and I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on when that's going to get taken care of if this were to happen. I think the other side that I would really rather focus on, because you already know the fiscal ramifications, but I think what gets lost in all this is that the federal prisoners that we are housing of the 88 or whatever the snapshot was on Friday, they are all primarily from the Fayetteville district, okay? That means that each one of these people would be not unlike people that are in our circuit courts going through the system. In fact, a good number of these are handed off from city, county, and state investigations right here locally and handed to the federal prosecutor for enhanced charges, i.e., whether it's gang activity, guns used in the commission of these crimes. I don't know. I mean, I just think that that's lost in this whole discussion, that these are primarily Washington County citizens. Their parents are Washington County citizens. And at the point that you disperse these people, where are they going to go? I don't even know. I'm going to get it from this side that you're dealing with, because their parents aren't going to be able to contact their loved ones, and they're not going to be readily available. The other thing that you got to remember is the courthouse is right here in Fayetteville. This is where they're going to be prosecuted. This is where the attorneys that are representing them that are here locally have to visit these people on a regular basis. I've got a handout, I'll give it to you, that'll break down all the information I'm giving you, because I know I'm spewing a lot of stuff at you. But I think I know philosophically we're dealing with a lot of issues here. But don't get caught up so much that you forget this humanistic side, and that is that these are people that are right here from Washington County that would be prosecuted here at the state level if not for the feds. Go down to Sebastian County, where they have a similar contract, where the majority of theirs are from out of state. They're from Boone County, Pope County, a lot of different places, because they have an interstate that they make a lot of those interdiction stops. So they end up with that kind of a prisoner. They've got Boone County prisoners because that courthouse was shut down, and the judge that hears them is in Fort Smith. So, I mean, they've got people from all over, but right here, the people that we are holding are from here. They're being prosecuted locally. The breakdown on the crimes as far as the drugs are, and remember, these are major deals. This isn't a simple possession. 39 cases of meth, transportation and narcotics trafficking. 10 cases of heroin. Money laundering and marijuana, large cases. Cocaine, there's only one case for cocaine. Well, let's look at this one. Project Safe Childhood, which involves child porn and offenses against our children. 15 of those. Where are we going to send them? I mean, I don't know. What's our responsibility? Project Safe Neighborhood. These are the ones that are committing serious crimes and they have weapons in their possession that state and locals have transferred to the federal government to be prosecuted for enhanced sentencing. Then you got and here's one, the violent, we got 7 on immigration violation. We got violent crimes such as bank robbery and murder. One of these is being the crime was committed, the initial crime of bank robbery was committed in Crawford County. Do you remember this one from last year where they got in pursuit, and then the shootout between law enforcement and this guy happened in West Fork? That's one of the people that are here. So I just think you need to hear that side of it. It's not all about the money. This is about doing the right thing with our partners, and with our courthouse right here. Where are they going to go? Benton County's got the contract, Sebastian County, and us. Everybody's fighting overcrowding. But this is part of what we do. We work with each other. That's all I have to say on the federal side.
Justice Leming.
Say if we did that and our federal prisoners was in Little Rock or wherever they got shipped to, would Washington County have to pay to go get them and bring them back here to try them? How does that work?
No, that would be on the U.S. Marshals, I would think. They would have to contract. Part of our contract with the U.S. Marshals is we can transport. They pay us overtime. They reimburse at an overtime rate if we transport anywhere outside of our jurisdiction. So I suppose that's possible. But I'm telling you, if this were dissolved, you know, Benton County and Sebastian County and us, we're all kind of in the same boat. We're already currently involved in this program. The Western District goes all the way down to Miller County, but the courthouse is right here. So it is a logistical problem. And I don't know. I don't know who's got room or who could take them. You know, I don't know.
Justice Deakins.
There's no easy answer to any of this overcrowding. And I know that, and I understand your arguments, but my priority is to the people of Washington County. When I went and toured the jail last November, it made me sick, because I don't think, I don't have the solutions or the silver bullet to the incarceration problem experienced here, but I know what that looked like, and I know that it hit me as that we're doing the wrong things. I don't have the answers for the federal government and their inmates, nor do I feel like it's my burden. I have to be first responsible to the people of Washington County. That's my first priority. Now, if I want to run for federal office one day, I might have a different opinion about that. But right now, my only focus is to help the people of Washington County and to help your officers and the population in your jail. I don't take this decision lightly. It's very difficult, but I want you to understand where we're coming from. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So basically what I said about these being from Washington County, this doesn't resonate. This is a federal issue, period.
I'm saying this is like the airplane is going down, and we're supposed to put our oxygen mask on before we help others. That's the analogy I would use in this situation.
Circle the wagons and let's
We
take care
have
of
to take
ourselves.
care of our inmates and our officers first.
Okay. I mean, I appreciate your input. I appreciate your opinions. And I don't want to get into a heated debate over this thing, but I'm going to tell you, this is a complex issue. And I would be very interested to know who all the citizens are that you've been speaking with, because I'm at a different location every day throughout this county. I go to the cafes, I go to Rotary, I go everywhere. I haven't had one person out in those scenarios that have told me that building or expanding a jail is not the right answer. I don't know who you're talking to. I don't know. I don't know what your sphere of reference is. I'm just telling you that I'm out there. So whether it ends up being expansion or not, please understand that we have great professionals working at the sheriff's office. We have built our reputation in this whole area of Northwest Arkansas. Our law enforcement community is not based on one agency circling the wagons and taking care of their own. This is about a bigger problem of public service and public safety. I'm sorry you can't see that, but that's my life. This is my calling. This is your part-time job as a legislator, that you're trying to look into what I do and have done for 40 years and trying to tell me what's the best course of action. I'm sorry, but you do have an opinion, but that's about all it is. Now, that's on the federal issue. Do you want me to go ahead and cover the state real quick?
Go ahead.
To rewind, Patrick, you asked Randall about the increased population within our jail. Just January, Springdale did close, all right? So they've anticipated on the misdemeanors. We're already taking their felons, but we also know that our felony filings are going up. So just by virtue of that, we're gonna see an increase in our felony filings and that number of people in jail. But Springdale anticipated between 1,500 and 1,800 new misdemeanors that they can't cite out or cut loose. Okay, so on any given day, they may bring in 10 or 12 new people that we've never seen before. And it could be higher, it could be lower. They are also anticipating loading people up, kind of stockpiling them, then bring them into a van. We talked about this in the overwhelming portion of our booking system. So we're starting to see all that. I'm just trying to explain why that bump could be. And I'm going to tell you one other thing that I anticipate. We won't know for a while. But with the set fee that we enacted, or that you all enacted for the cities, just on that set number based on population, we have done away with the incentives for people to look at other alternative motives or methods of arrest, okay? And I don't know, I sense that there's just not that buy-in to help the Washington County Jail with the situation. We're paying our money, so whoever we arrest, we'll take to them. They can deal with it. We'll see. It'll take us a while to really make a determination what that bump and that increase is. But I have a feeling those two things are going to add to it. One other thing that you wanted to know about the 95, the number of people that were shipped out, that's about average per month. But I think what we did see recently was our parole group came in and they kicked a bunch out, which we don't have any control over. And just so you know, ADC, they call us the night before they're to be transported. They tell us who to get ready. They don't want any advance warning because of transport issues and safety. Now, if I may, I'd like to just briefly speak to the resolution because the next one's on the state deal. Can I do that? I know it's a little out of order and we don't have our attorney here, but I just wanted you to know that this relationship is, I don't care, you know, I mean, but here again, these folks are local, their families are here, they committed their crimes here, they went to school here, they were convicted here, and this will place us undue burden as far as transport to get them out and identify places that can hold them. I haven't ever done the research to see who all could take them off our hands. There probably are some jails that can do it across the state, but guess who has to get them there and who has to do all that follow-up on that. Also, I would mention that I just returned from our association conference. We have high hopes that there's going to be an increase in the reimbursement rates for state inmates. I don't know what that looks like as far as an amount. It sure won't get to $62 a day. I already know that. But historically, from a historic perspective, I've been as sheriff for 15 years. I've only seen the one increase from 28 to 30, and that was under this governor. If he does it again, that's a historic event because it's not a real popular thing to do to increase that reimbursement rate. So, and I don't need to talk to you anymore about the fiscal implications and what it costs us to run the jail. I will advise you, just based on my experience and my history, we dump this 100 folks, 150 folks, whatever it is. Don't kid yourself. There's going to be a backfill. There's going to be people filling those beds. It's just going to happen. I can't, you said, well, I just don't understand. Well, guess what? I've been doing this my whole life. I don't understand. But I think it has to do with we got a great law enforcement community. They arrest a lot of people. And we've got a log jam. So, all right. Do what you will. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion on the floor and a second to pass the resolution in item number 8, which is item 8.1 in your agenda. Discussion.
Sheriff Helder, I have to just respond to what you said earlier, that people that are coming to you are not discussing this side. Just from experience being in the community, foot on the ground with the community, it is your legacy, you know what you're doing, and so no one's going to approach you with any new ideas because you know what you're doing. And so in order to solve a problem, we need to see different solutions, and that's what we're trying to do. But I just wanted to let you know that's what's happening in the community. Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Are you ready to vote on the question? The question is to pass this resolution under the quorum court with a do-pass recommendation. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no.
No.
The ayes have it, the motion passes. Item 9, Justice Deakins.
Thank you, Chairman Johnson. I'll read this title, Resolution to Address the Issue of Housing State Inmates in the Washington County Detention Center. If it would be sufficient to the to the body, I will skip down to line 35. The recitals previous to that are the same for the previous resolution. Whereas due to insufficient bed space for state prisoners, the county jails of Arkansas, including Washington County Detention Center, are used to house state prisoners until bed space becomes available in the Arkansas Department of Corrections. The state of Arkansas pays a daily per diem rate, which is a small portion of the actual cost of housing inmates when they have been convicted by the courts of Washington County, Arkansas. The rate is $30 a day, less than half the amount of the stated current cost of $62 per day. Whereas there are county jails in Arkansas that are not at the capacity, and they are often willing to accept prisoners from other counties in order to receive $30 per day paid by the state of Arkansas for housing said inmates. And whereas solving the jail overcrowding issue and the causes of overcrowding is a journey that will require long-term and ongoing commitment from this and future quorum courts, and there are steps that can be taken to immediately to ease the overcrowding in Washington County. The Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas respectfully resolves hereby to request and support the Washington County Sheriff to take all necessary steps to transfer as soon as practicable state prisoners awaiting bed space in the Arkansas Department of Corrections from Washington County Detention Center to other Arkansas County jails who are willing to accept said prisoners. Let it be resolved that this resolution is made for the purpose of ensuring a safe and healthy environment at the Washington County Detention Center for Law Enforcement Protection Services and the custody of persons accused or convicted of crimes, and to comply with the Arkansas Code. Just a couple things. We understand that the $30 a day is essentially a consolation prize to taking on the state responsibility. We reluctantly accept that. A lot of my comments from the previous resolutions apply directly to this one. I've had conversations with several officials throughout the state at different levels and hold different positions. This is possible. Other counties do it. We need to at least investigate it, see what the ramifications would be for Washington County, and see if it is, if it's practicable for us to do it. And so, once again, I'm asking this body to approve this resolution. I make a recommendation that we pass this to the full quorum court with a do pass recommendation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Got a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion, second, discussion. Justice Duncan.
So obviously Patrick said a lot, and there's been a lot said this evening. For those new to the conversation, we've got two main issues that we're plagued with. So the first is what's been quoted as crisis level overcrowding at the jail. So there's 100 people that are sleeping on these mats. They're about this thick on the floor. So we've got 100 more people than the jail really should have. That's as of today. So we've got that issue, and the second piece is funding, right? We got to pay for everything. So when I look at this, where we're getting paid $30 a day for something that cost at least $62, I think $62 is probably on the low side from previous audits we've seen. It's just not, we're not able to fund that with $30 a day. So to me, the state inmates is the low-hanging fruit of anything, because they're only paying less than half of the actual cost. So that's why I was really excited to sponsor this one in particular, because I do think we have opportunity to transfer inmates across the state and free up some capacity. And just a reminder to everyone, we're constitutionally required to ensure the safety of inmates. And if we're constitutionally required to do that, I don't see how, if we have an option to remove people and make it a safer place, that we can't go through with that. Obviously, that's not our decision on the court. We get to propose a resolution, and then the sheriff gets to run the jail as he's elected to do so. So anyways, that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Other comments? Justice Yanez?
Do we have any data on the residency of the state inmates?
Say that again.
Any data on the residency of the state inmates?
On ours?
Yeah.
Everybody but the, I'm sorry. So the state inmates, all with the exception of the 309 program that we have, are the people that do the mowing and the mechanic work and the janitorial services, the cooking, are from right here. They're from Washington County, and I guess Madison County, our district, our judicial district. Does that make sense? So,
It does.
okay, so.
So
It's
we
only
get-
the people that are involved in the program to do the work that are here for long periods of time, the 309s. They try to get them up here near their family in this region, but I just don't have the information on that group.
So it's the only thing we're getting $30, and how do we cover the rest?
You don't even get 30, well, you don't even get 30 for the 309s if we want to dig deep down into the weeds. Basically, they pay us half of that, but it's for services. We need those people to run our kitchen, to do the mowing for the whole South Campus, to do, I can't even tell you what the dollar figure would be for the amount of projects that these guys are doing. The state inmates that are waiting for bed space that have been convicted here, you understand the process, pre-trial, they're
I do.
arrested, okay, and so there's no pay until the day they're convicted. Then the state starts paying at the rate of $30 a day until a bed opens up down there. So, chasing a rabbit, sorry, I lost my focus. What was your initial question on the $30?
What other funding do we get to cover that, the inmates?
Medical, that's covered under the state, but that's it. It's $30. It's $30 a day.
So we're just holding them here until they're covering their sentence?
We're holding them here until a bed becomes available at the prison.
At another prison?
Well, we're not a prison, we're a
Okay.
detention center. So we're basically just in a holding pattern until space becomes available. But you gotta remember, it's not just that group, I'm sorry, so many things going on in my head. So we've got the people that are convicted waiting on beds. We've got parole violators. We've got a very aggressive parole group up here, and this is, if they're violating their probation or their parole in Washington and Madison County, they come here. And there's a lot of different programs within parole that we end up with them. So, but they're paying us $30 a day for all
Yeah.
of those people.
And it's just the beginning of a conversation
Sure.
on this, so.
Sure, yeah. Did I answer that okay?
Well, there's probably still more questions.
Okay.
But just the beginning of a conversation
Sure,
to understand it all.
Yeah.
And see what's best for us.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else while I'm up here?
Justice Leming.
On the state, though, we have to, say if all of our people gets shipped to Pine Bluff to wherever, we have to go get them, bring them back. Our state people, right?
Are you talking about the ones that are convicted and waiting for a bed?
Our pretrial,
Well, I don't think we're talking about pretrial. We can't do that.
state
We don't-
inmates.
I mean, I suppose we could do that pretrial. We could ship them all over the state and pay somebody to house them and then bring them back. But the ones that have been convicted that I think
Yeah, waiting on a bed
Mr.
to go.
Deakins is referring to, those are people that we would have to work out a deal with whatever jail, and then they would get the compensation from the state as long as the state agrees and the county agrees, and then theoretically, they would go from whatever jail that is to the prison when a bed opens up.
And I
So
think
we wouldn't necessarily, the only transport logistical problem we'd have is emptying our jail and getting them transported to other
I think
places.
another one of her part of her question was who pays the difference between 30 and 60? Was that what you was digging for?
The Washington County.
That's
That's
the
us.
that's the
That's us,
taxpayers.
man. That's us.
And if it goes to the state, you're still paying taxes, so you're still paying. So you're gonna pay regardless. Thank you.
Okay. That it?
Is it? Okay, any other questions for the sheriff? Okay, we have a motion second on the table. Are you ready for the question? Okay. The question, let me make sure I get it right. The question is item number 9 on the agenda, to pass the resolution to address the issue of housing state inmates in the Washington County Detention Center. And the question is to pass it on to the quorum court with a due pass recommendation. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
No.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item 10 on the agenda is the Washington County Criminal Justice Assessment. There's a report in your packet. I'll give you the Cliff Note version of that. The National Center for State Courts has requested information from several entities within the county and several individuals within the county. They are in the process of setting up an interview schedule that will take place later in February. I think everybody on this court either has been or will be contacted to set up an interview date. And once they continue that, get that process done, study all of that, then we will begin to get some feedback. Comments? Questions? All right, that's a report. Okay, item number 11 is the public comment period. We have a 12-minute comment period. We ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes.
I'm Mac Mayfield, 980 Rocky Lane, rural Fayetteville. A lot of weighty issues here tonight. This one's probably a little smaller, but I think no less important to the people who are involved. And that's the issue of the change in communications providers at the jail back in January. I'm very interested to find out what happened to their commissary accounts. The sheriff had stated that there would be no refunds. I looked at the terms and conditions of service from Smart Communications, the vendor. I'm not a lawyer, but they would need a lawyer to be able to get any money back out of those people, is the way it appeared to me. So it seemed to me that might be something that would fall within the domain of this committee, as is pretty vulnerable people with no recourse as it appears. So I bring that for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman.
Public comment.
Hello, Sarah Moore of Fayetteville, Arkansas. I just wanted to thank everyone for the conversation that we're continuing to have. We've got some new faces in the audience that maybe don't know, all of the gist of what this conversation has been, but this has been, multiple years, as Sheriff Helder has said, that he's had the overcrowding that's been existing within the facility. And I think in this last year, it feels like our entire between the key stakeholders have been at the table having this conversation. I think citizens have been very engaged, nonprofits and folks that go and volunteer and do programs like at the ACC have been involved. And I think that a lot of folks have come to the table. I think it was mentioned at one point that we're in a once-in-a-million opportunity that we can actually do something here looking at justice reform that could actually be a model within the nation. And I think that we definitely are at that time. I know it's scary when we approach change. I know there are going to have to be hard conversations. I know that there will be finances probably involved in taxpayer money that we're going to have to decide where we potentially spend it, where we think that it's going to have the best outcome for the citizens of Washington County. But I appreciate every person that has stepped forward, that has been a part of this conversation. I know that the sheriff has probably felt on the hot seat, but I know that his staff and his team have been very open to talking to all of us that have been sitting down. They've given numbers and reports and all of that, as well as the prosecutor's office, public defenders, like I said, nonprofits and folks in the community. So I just appreciate all the folks that brought this stuff forward, and I would really hope that everyone would really seriously consider moving forward with actually terminating the state and the federal prisoners, because that's something that actually moves the needle in a very big and real way for us and actually gets bodies off the floor today. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Beth Koger, Fayetteville, and I want to thank, like Sarah did, I want to thank you for listening to what we've been saying and for these resolutions tonight. And because it's a start, we're looking at different ways now, different alternatives, because obviously what we have been doing is not working. And as to the federal prisoners, I think we should let the federal government handle that. You shouldn't have to worry about how we're going to solve that. That's up to them. And as you said, as someone said, your responsibility is to the people of Washington County, and that should be first when you're considering these things. One thing, and I'm not picking on Sheriff Helder here, but he said, I believe he said something when he was speaking like, if we clear these people out of the jail with these resolutions, we'll just fill the beds back up again. That's the problem. That is the problem. He hit the nail on the head. Why are we filling the beds back up again? That's what we need to focus on too. Thank you.
Next speaker.
Make a motion, we adjourn.
Without objection, this meeting's adjourned. Thank you.